Guys, the Rubicon axles are in, and now it's time to wire these bad boys up. I went and bought some things from Amazon to make life a little bit easier. First thing I bought was this switch panel that fits right there. Now you can see I got tan, but I've also got black up here, so this black will look fine down there. It's kind of a two-tone. I went ahead and got a switch panel. I don't need the switch panel, but it was just as cheap to buy the 3 switches as it was the 3 switches with the little aluminum panel here. So I went ahead and got 3 rocker switches. The 2 and the 3 were the same price when I went to buy them, so I went ahead and got the 3. I'll just wire lights into the other one or whatever. This is a 5-gang panel that I'm fixing to put up, so I'll have 2 open spots for whatever I want. This is made for a 2011 up JK. These are just generic rocker switches. And then I also bought, we'll open it up in a minute, look at it, factory wiring for the actuator. Those Rubicon axles lockers have 2 plugs coming out of them. One is just an indicator, and that's actually the bigger plug. The smaller plug is the actual actuator, and it's just a 12 volt. It pulls, from what I can read, it pulls between, some people say 4.5, some people say 8.5 amps. Either way, pretty low amperage. I'm not going to run a relay because these are 20 amp switches. So if it's only pulling 8 amps, even 9 at the most, I've still got plenty of juice in these switches to not overheat them. I probably will run a 15 amp fuse, inline fuse, to the power side that or the grounding side that comes to this. I guess that's grounding. I guess I need to look, see how to wire them. Anyway, let's get these switches out of this panel, and then you can kind of see what we're working with. You can buy stock wiring for these axles pretty cheap. This whole harness right here with the plug was like 20 bucks, 25 bucks. I'll put a link in the description if anyone needs to wire up Rubicon axles. The Rubicon axles have 2 plugs. We'll look at it in a second. One is this plug, which is actually the actuator, which is the switch power that you would activate the locker with. The other one is just the sensor that hooks up through the Rubicon in a Rubicon Jeep, that hooks up and lets the Jeep know, as far as from a light standpoint, a idiot light on the dash, that your lockers are activated. So this is the one that's important if you're just wiring up Rubicon lockers on a non-Rubicon vehicle. It's just 2 wires, black and red. What I'll do is, you can see I've already got this one ran kind of up to the front of the vehicle. That goes to the back. This one will go to the front. I'll just wire that off to a ground, wire this one up to the switch, and that. So these 20 amp switches act like a relay, act like their own relay, so, and they're wired kind of like their own relay. So you can run this without fear of having to run to a separate relay. Now, one thing I will say is I did get this plate from Rugged Ridge that sits in a stock location. We'll look at here in a minute underneath the original switch panel in this Jeep. Here's the only problem I have with it. Once you get these relay style switches in there, there's really not much room for wiring. You just have to cut out the blanks. It's got 2 more blanks. I'll have a locker 1, locker 2, or front, rear, and then probably some rock lights or whatever other type of lights I want. And then if I need to add anything, I'll have these 2 slots. They just go into, or once I run my 2 wires up here, they just go into these switches, and the switch has its own power and ground, and I will try to run that to just switch power. That's the way they're set up. You can set them up 2 different ways, either switch power or constant power. I'm going to set them up to switch power, so I'll just find an accessory to hook these 2, and then I'll ground this somewhere under the dash. Should be pretty easy. I just jinxed myself completely. I should not have said that. I'm an idiot. Guys, I've got this plugged into the axle in the back, and I've got it ran down the frame rail on the inside where the stock wiring harness comes, and I've got it coming right up here underneath here. I'm going to pull it up through the battery box here, and then there's 2 places you can penetrate into the cab. There's one if you actually look behind the battery box, but you got to take the battery box out, which is pretty time consuming. I'm not going to deal with that one. The one I'm going to deal with is way back in that cowl, right back in there. And if you remove this panel right here, well, here, let me show you this one. I've already removed the driver's side. I'm going to take one through the driver's side, one through the passenger side. I know it's kind of asinine, but I'm just following some stock wiring locations here. When you get it removed, you can see right here, there's a penetration, and it's filled full of foam. and you can just stick a screwdriver through that or a pick or something, and it will come out. You can't really see it. It'll come out right in there, and you can just pull your wiring right down through here and right into the engine bay. When I run it through, I'll run just the positive through, and I'll keep the ground out here, and I'll just ground it to the engine or the battery or one of the grounding straps. That way it's grounded out here, and only the power signal, only the positive signal will go into the cab. All right, guys, so this is what it looks like when you take it off, and it's just push pins. This little lip right here does keep this from kind of coming out, so you kind of got to wedge it and really work on it. Just pops straight up. And then this whole piece, if you've never taken it off, comes off. I just took the controls off so I could see down in there, and I think I'm going to run my power off of this accessory because I don't use it. That'll be good. That'll be an easy place for me to wire up power to, since I want it to be keyed. All this just unplugs. This is your main AC controller right here, and then this is going to be your electric mirrors if you have them, and this plug is your main switch panel. And it just also comes out with push pins. That's kind of up under there. There's some 2 push pins that it's in. It just all kind of pops loose. So just get that out of the way. Now I'm going to run the wires, and I'm going to run both wires through the same hole in the dash on the passenger side. Just to make it easy, I can take the glove box out and maybe get a little better access. I'm not going to show you how to run wires behind your dash. You just run wires behind your dash. I'm not sure how to explain that. But I will show y'all where the harness plugs in at on the axle. All right, guys, on these Rubicon axles, there'll be 2 small plugs. You'll see this one hanging. That's the one that just goes to the sensor that says it's locked or unlocked. That one right there, it's a little bit different on the rear than the front, but it's that little 2-prong plug. That's your activator. That's just your switched power to your axle. And so this aftermarket harness I bought just plugs right in. The only challenge I see is it is real close to that control arm, but I don't know how you would combat that. I'm not worried about it on axle droop, but axle compression on this side looks like it would hit to me. Anyway, let me get it all wired up. I'll worry about that after I get it wired up. Aftermarket comes with a big long lead, so I should be fine just to run that up in the engine bay and over to the other side where the other one is. If you want to test the lockers or make sure that they're actuating, going through all this trouble, all you got to do, because they pull such low amps, is just put a 12-volt signal to them. I can do this one-handed. Not hear that? That clicking noise is it activating, so we should be good. All right, so I have ran through that penetration over there. Up above the glove box, down into here. I've pulled my 12-volt switch lighter plug here so I can tap into it for my switch power. And then here are my 2 positives from the lockers. But that's ready to now wire in. Still got to clip all the zip ties. I have the wiring going across from up through there. Watch out for your steering sector shaft. Any suspension components. Over here you can see how that goes back to the cowl. Now I have split these 2. This one comes up here, one comes from over here, the rear comes from up here. And I have them wired under here, up through here, and they come up right there. And they're wired into the negative. So this is kind of what it looks like wired in so far. Here's my 2 locker positives coming into the switch. This negative and positive will go to that. I've already got the ends shrink wrapped on. I just got to clip that and put new ends on that one. Then shrink wrap everything, tape everything together. Everything will go back in, and we'll be ready to rock. I did test them just by putting the wires into that little plug and hitting the switches, and you can hear them click. So I think we're good. Let's get everything buttoned back up and kind of see what it looks like. All right, she is in there. I'm not a huge fan of the black panel, even though this is 2-tone black, but I couldn't find a camel one that was available, or a tan one that was available. So we're going with black. It's fine. The switches are black. These are black. Looks fine. I won't notice it after I stop noticing it, if that makes sense. Let's see how much room we got here. Oh yeah, we're fine. These two might get a little dicey once I get something in there, but all this is good. This one isn't hooked up yet. That would be lights, rear locker, front locker. There is a double-sided piece of tape that goes up down through there. I didn't pull that off and stick it because when I do wire up whatever going here and here and here, I don't want to have to deal with that double-sided tape. It's pretty sturdy. It's not going anywhere. But if I did have all 5 switches going, I'd go ahead and tape that because it does provide a little bit of support back here where I can wiggle that just slightly. But again, this thing's only held in with the 2 clips and the 2 hooks that go in like that. It did take a little bit of prying to get this pulled back enough to kind of get everything down in there. Once it went in there, though, it went in real smooth. All right, guys, pretty clean install. I still need to button this up, and I still need to cut all my zip ties. Everything is heat shrink wrapped, new terminals put on everything, and ready to go. So if you don't like the A-pillar switches, or you don't want to put an S-pod up because you don't want to spend $200, this is a pretty cheap solution. Again, I got 20 bucks in this from Amazon. I think 17 is what it wound up being. The switches, I think, were about 17 as well. 3 switches with another plate if I wanted to mount it somewhere else. A nice aluminum plate. The 2 wiring harnesses for the axles was $22, $23 each. So I got about 80 bucks in the whole wiring kit from axle to switch. So not bad. So the only complaint I do have with this is super close. And I went to shift back into 2-wheel drive to get this back where it needs to be. And I pinched the heck out of my finger between there. So I'm going to have to know to grab with my hand around down here and my thumb up here. Something like that, because that is super close. That'd be the only complaint. So I hope this takes some of the mystery out of wiring for these Rubicon lockers. It's not hard at all. It's just a switch. Now, if you have a Rubicon and you want to make it to where you can turn your lockers on and off in high range or even in 2-wheel drive, I don't know that process. That might be slightly different. But the good news about this is I do have that ability to turn these lockers on at any given time, whether I'm in 2-wheel high, 4-wheel high, 4-wheel low, whatever. The only other thing I had to do, and this doesn't have to do with the lockers, but the axles, is I did have to reset my gear ratios and my tire heights so that my transmission came out of limp mode. Worked perfect. I just used the OBD2 Bluetooth unit and JScan app, and it was super easy. So guys, I hope this helps. If it does, please like and subscribe, and I will see y'all later. Maybe we'll get to test these things out.